Okay, we're ready to open the public hearing. I apologize for the delay. For the Renewable Energy Overlay District, this is a site plan review. And we've given this about 45 minutes for discussion. If you gentlemen could try to hold your presentation to 20 minutes or so, then we can open up the hearing for questions from the planning board and its consultants and then for the public. I'm Al Adelot, I'm the chairman of the planning board, and other members are?
Tony Flynn is missing at the moment. I'm Roy Chattelbash.
Steve Oppenheimer.
Good. Then please go ahead.
Al, did you want any sort of preamble about where the town is on this and with how we arrived at this point?
I think it would be helpful.
It might make sense.
Sure.
It was, the overlay district was part of the requirement for a green community, which the town of Weston achieved in 2011.
Yes.
2011? Yes. And we have, as a green community, we've received funds from the state for various projects, energy conservation projects. We also received some support from the state to hire a consultant to help us evaluate the potential of our landfill site for solar photovoltaic electrical energy production. And I would remind people that the landfill site was closed prior to 1990. I'm not sure it's
92.
1992.
It was capped in 92. It was
92.
closed in the 80s.
And is under requirements of the state to maintain that cap and maintain the closure. There's a closure permit from the state and oversight from the state. But the state has encouraged communities to consider their landfill sites for solar photovoltaic energy production. In fact, Wayland, Acton, Sudbury, among the communities in the area have it, and many others are looking at it. We issued a request for proposals, and you see before you the winning bidder, Ameresco, very experienced. They've done work for many communities in Massachusetts. They're actually a national company, publicly traded company, good creditworthiness, and they were the winning bidder. The winning bidder being that bidder who proposes to provide energy at the lowest cost, although the first step in the process is the qualifications. Interestingly, we had many responses. I think it was 9, was it?
10.
10 responses. Ameresco won in both categories, the best qualified and the lowest price of energy. So we're excited about this project. It will produce approximately 38% of the total energy used by the town when it's fully up and running annually. By the town, I mean both our municipal and school buildings, of the electrical energy. So it's a significant project for us. The savings will be in excess of $250,000 a year. And we have a 20-year contract with Ameresco. They will be the owner of the panels, pay personal property taxes on those. The town leases the land to Ameresco for $1 a year, and buys the energy from Ameresco that's produced here. Then we get the offset from the net metering from Eversource, or is it Everscarce? Only when you're looking for them to fix the electricity, to show up. But Eversource, we get a net metering. So we're significant savings here. The state is still involved in all this process to make sure that the cap is maintained properly. And one of the interesting issues in maintaining that cap is that you can't plant trees on it. So with that, I'll turn it over to our partners, future partners from Ameresco to talk about the specifics of the project they proposed. I will add finally that we've had a site walk with George Bates looking at a trail, and the Conservation Commission has been involved in a site walk as well.
Can you see the drawing with the camera? Needs to turn around a little.
Okay, thank you.
Not too much.
Now, good.
Halfway.
Right there.
That's good. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. My name is Joel Lindsay. I'm with Ameresco. And I've got with me here tonight my colleague at Ameresco, Ray Hanna. He's our construction manager. And also, we are working with AMEC, Foster Wheeler, and Rob Bukowski here is with AMEC. AMEC has actually prepared the site plan review filing for us as a consultant. And just following on what Michael said, we've been working with since we were awarded the right to basically work with the town and negotiate a contract. We've been working with the committee for several months, and we really enjoyed that. We've been moving through the process, as Michael said. We've executed a contract for the sale of electricity, also a lease with the town, and we have actually worked with the Conservation Commission, as was mentioned. We filed for a request for determination of applicability with them. We've been through that process. We've got a negative determination there. We also just kind of in parallel with this process, we have filed with the DEP for the post-closure use permit. So we filed that application. That is in, and they have a certain amount of time they have to review that. We've also been working with Betsy in terms of kind of having some initial meetings, familiarizing her with what we're doing, what the system's going to look like. We provided her with some information. In addition to the filing, the actual elements of the filing, we've also provided some renderings that we did early on, which were basically ways of kind of visualizing somewhat what the system would look like. So just to give you a little more context on where we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually turn it to Rob to kind of go through some of the basics of what he's filed, and then we're not going to take a long time. We're going to just open it up for your questions and see where it takes us.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Joel. I'll stand over here so I don't block anything. My name's Rob Bukowski. I'm with AMEC. We're the civil engineering and environmental consultant for Ameresco. So the proposal here is for just over 2.25 megawatts of solar, and the total area is just under 10 acres that it'll take up. Access to the site will be through the transfer station and up there. There's currently somewhat of a gravel road that will have to be improved, but it comes up to the top here. There'll be a permanent gravel access road that's shown in this gray hatch here with a turnaround at the end. And during construction, there's also going to be some temporary staging, which will be gravel laid down over the cap, which will be used for storing some of the equipment, for vehicle parking for the site workers, that type of thing. So as the array is constructed, which will be from the south up to the north, that gravel will be pulled back in areas and used underneath these ballast blocks. So the way that these tables, the racks of panels are constructed is it's a steel or aluminum rack that sits on a concrete ballast block. The biggest thing DEP is concerned with is the integrity of the cap. So whatever we propose needs to make sure that that integrity is maintained. So these ballast blocks that are about 3 feet by 10 feet or so will sit on the cap. We'll take about 6 inches of topsoil off of the cap, replace it with gravel, and then set the concrete block on top.
But just to be clear, only where the blocks are.
Right.
The rest of the surface of the landfill stays as is.
There are 2 blocks per panel. There's different shadings here. You can see the darker ones and the lighter ones. The size of the blocks are different. The darker ones are a little bit larger only because they have exterior exposure to heavier wind loads. Some of the interior ones get blocked and are exposed to a little bit less wind velocity. These circles that you see here, the bullseye looking things, are the existing passive gas vents that are at the landfill. There's a minimum 10-foot radius provided around those to maintain access to those for future monitoring and maintenance. As I mentioned, DEP's biggest concern is with the integrity of the cap. So the things that we look at are making sure that what's installed on the cap is going to maintain that integrity. We look at things like settlement, we look at stability against sliding, overturning. We look at the stormwater impact. So, you know, this landfill area is capped, so below 1.5 or 2 feet of soil, there's an impervious liner that sits there. So the way stormwater goes now is it falls on the top of the landfill, it infiltrates down through, and it goes across through a sand drainage layer that's above that impervious liner. And it gets carried to, you can see some of these stone swales here. Eventually the water either ends up south as a small pond here, or the detention pond up by the transfer station. So with the addition of the panels, that doesn't really change. The water still falls. It falls on the panels now, goes off and falls on the grass, similar to the way it would before. Really the only difference is the concrete blocks that are placed now provide a little bit less surface area. So we take a conservative approach when we look at the stormwater and consider it as that we're adding impervious area. Based on that analysis, the existing stormwater management infrastructure, the swales, the pond, it can handle that excess runoff. So there'll be no impacts to stormwater.
Rob,
Yeah,
I'll just interject, just in terms of the way these solar panels are oriented, you may be familiar with this. They're basically in these tables, as Rob mentioned. They're essentially, they're about 3 by 5 to 3 by 6 size each panel, and there's a table supported by two blocks that is basically a 4 by 5 collection of panels. I think that's what we got there. And so basically at the lower end, and they're angled looking, they're basically tilted towards the south for the most efficient collection of solar energy. And at the lower end of that table, they're about 2 to 2.5 feet off the ground. And at the upper end, because they're tilted, the upper end is probably around 6 feet high, roughly 6 to 7 feet high. Just to give you a sense spatially of how they're oriented. Again, you know, as really the only place where where dirt is some soils taken out is where the blocks are. The rest of it just remains grass, and we do maintain that grass. You know, we want to keep it below the level.
The last thing I'll mention about stormwater is that we've included erosion and sedimentation control measures here. This line that sort of surrounds the top, that surrounds the array that says SB is a sediment barrier. So what it basically is a compost sock. It's a sock that's just filled with basically mulch, and it's laid down and use sandbags to secure in place. The idea here is we want to prevent any sediment or any runoff, sediment-containing runoff from entering into the swales or from going off of the top of the landfill. There is a fence that's proposed around it, which is this line with the X's in it. Because we can't penetrate down through the cap and into the liner, the fence posts are also ballasted, so there'll be concrete blocks with a hole in the middle, and then the fence posts will be put inside that.
And we propose that as a black chain fence. And the fence actually defines our leased area with the town. So that actually defines that. Rob, I just wanted to, you all may have questions on this too. We've been working with Steve a lot, and also we've met with the DPW folks out at the site in terms of how we're going to work with make sure that we do not impact the transfer station operations. So we've been working through that with Tom and the other folks at DPW as far as how we're going to work with that. I don't know if there's any, important details. I think Ray is our construction manager, and he's been talking to them about how we're going to manage the truck traffic during construction. Once it's constructed, there's really very little activity on the site. There might be, once or twice a year, a pickup truck might go up there. There's virtually no traffic. But during construction, obviously, there's deliveries, and so we need to manage that with the transfer transfer station operations.
And it's about a 2.5-month construction process, 3 months?
I'd say 3 to 4.
3 to 4, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most of the delivery activity, my name is Ray Hanna, I'll be the construction manager on this job. Most of the activity will be in the beginning when the heavy delivery of concrete ballasts, racks, and panels come in. Once that process is complete, which is typical about maybe a month worth of delivery, the activities up on top of the landfill will probably be seamless to everybody else during the rest of the construction. And then we go through a commissioning phase, so that takes a little bit of time. But just to emphasize that the heaviest part of the traffic is going to be the first 1 to 2 months, and then it tapers off.
I think we wanted to keep it brief. Those are some of the basics, and we can turn it over to questions.
Hours of operation, you gotta comply with the town's zoning bylaw on that? Okay. Questions, comments? Yes.
So what you haven't mentioned is the impact on the abutters, particularly the abutters on Carroll Circle and Hitching Post Lane or Lowerfield Road, whatever it's called. And I mean, I couldn't be more in favor of renewable energy and certainly see the advantages to the town. However, from the way it's currently being designed, to me, it seems like it's a win for the town, it's a win for you, but it's all at the expense of the abutters. There's no solid fence proposed, there are no screen plantings, trees, what have you proposed, and some of the properties are very much affected, have very obvious views of the solar panel array. I know that you can't plant anything on the cover. I know you can't even maybe put a solid fence on the cover because of the weight of it. And I know we can't require you to install any of these things off the landfill and onto the abutters' properties. However, I, for one, and I can only speak for myself, will vote against this without proper screening for the abutters. It's a huge issue.
And I agree with Steve. I mean, this is a wonderful benefit for the entire town. We're going to save $250,000 a year, but the entire burden of this project is borne by those neighbors. And when you look at what they're going to look at, it's awful. And I think it's totally unfair. And however it works, I think if the neighbors would allow us to do it, to have a landscape consultant that the town pays for, however y'all want to work it out.
Or the applicant.
Right. Yes, the town or the applicant, however you all want to work it out, but they should not have to pay a dime. This is, it's a huge benefit to them, nothing to them.
It also affects their property values,
Yeah.
and I don't understand how we could have come, potentially affects their property values. I can't understand how we could have come this far. This thing has been proposed, I don't know, for a year or two. There's been a solar panel committee with town volunteers, and no one has come up with any ideas or proposals on how to screen this from the abutters. It's just mind-boggling to me.
What have you done with other projects to screen it from the abutters?
Well, it's very individual.
What's the most you've done?
There can be, there can be fences that are more, that can hide the system more. There can be higher fences.
But this runs right up the hill. I mean,
That's right.
You've seen the pictures, so a high
Well,
fence is not necessarily
Yeah,
going to do an
we
awful
actually
lot.
prepared the rendering, so
Yeah.
we this is not an issue that we've been, ignoring by any means. We've actually, in our meetings with the solar committee, we've had butters in with us that have expressed their concerns. We've prepared some renderings, looked at some possible ways of addressing that, and we want to find, the best way to make it work. We understand your point, certainly, and we see this where, there can be sometimes, if it physically works, depending on topography, you can plant vegetative screens if you're not on top of the path and you've got some space. In this particular case, we have a significant buffer between where the system is and where the properties are. In addition, there, and I'm not saying it's perfect by any means, but there's a significant amount of landfill space that's still actually covered by cap that we're not on. If you look in this area, this is, and I'm not making it, just saying what physically is the situation. There's a significant buffer here, and then there are trees. Those are mostly deciduous though, so in the winter, you can see more. And so,
You see a lot now.
and you can still see some in the summer, you can see less.
Right.
But I think what you're pointing out is true in that the landfill does go up. So, and we actually prepared a rendering where we took a photo from the backyard of 24 Carroll Circle. I took a photo, and then we basically created a rendering that showed what the system would look like. And, you know, based on the line of sight there, the fence, if you have a 6-foot fence, it does provide some screening, but it's not total screening. You can still see something because the landfill rises beyond that, so there's a change, you know, some change.
You're talking about the chain link fence?
Yeah, the black chain link fence.
And at any point in
So-
time, did you bring a landscape consultant in, a landscape designer to take a look at this, to see if there's some way you can mitigate this?
Well, we
Any kind of plantings, because you can't put up a solid fence.
right. We've certainly talked to the community about this, and, you know, we've asked them to, you know, weigh in on, you know, what they think might be the, you know, a solution. We talked about whether there's things that can be done on the abutting properties, which might provide the most screening. If you're looking at, you know, providing trees at a distance, which in this case we can't plant on the cap
Right.
anyway,
Right.
you're not gonna necessarily screen it. So it's really.
Are any of the abutters here? I guess we need to ask them.
Yes.
My name is Andrew Compain. I'm at 24 Carroll Circle. We've tried to put in our concerns from the very beginning and feel like we've been turfed, that it's not the problem of the committee looking to green the town, and maybe not even the planning board, but I'm not sure whose concern it is. It's certainly our concern. We're really excited too, and we can feel the excitement in the room for saving $250,000 a year and furthering the green initiative in Weston. But it feels like it falls completely on our shoulders. We have unobstructed view when it's winter time. You see the entire, it's been, you know, the entire hill. And even in summertime, you can see the hill. We had to like beg to even get someone to come out and take pictures. And then when the pictures were taken, we never got access to the rendering. I mean, we went on a site visit just a week or two ago, and we hadn't seen the rendering at that point. But when you look at the rendering, it's pretty clear that you need some screening. So, you know, it's interesting, on the left-hand side of one of the pictures taken from our driveway, there's a pine tree that's about 15 to 20 feet tall, and you can tell that if you have pine trees that tall, you're gonna just about begin to screen the view. But that's, you know, one tree that just happens to be there. We have almost 300 feet exposed. So from the second floor of our house, we're gonna be completely looking at solar array. And then from the first floor, and when you drive in our driveway, you know, you're talking about a house that we put all of our money into, and here it is, it's now looking at solar array. I mean, I can't understand how it could get to this point, and we're not the only abutter, that there isn't a plan for what we're gonna, why should we shoulder that, you know, in a project that's $5 million over how many years you're gonna lease it? Why should that come out of my property value and no one else in the town?
Right, when the entire town benefits from this, yeah.
I think it's great, yeah.
Patently unfair.
So a wooden fence is not even the beginning of an answer? Replacing the chain link fence with a wooden fence? Finances aside, per se?
That provides a different look, could provide potentially additional screening depending on how the fence is constructed.
You don't have a rendering of that,
And
for example?
We had done some, we looked at what's more, it's not really a full screening fence. We haven't looked at a fence that's a full screen. You know, we've
Just a
looked at
wooden
some that
fence.
are just, they're more wooden construction, so it's a little different look, but.
I held out hope for a wooden fence. You didn't? Is that what you were saying earlier?
I don't, well, number one, they can't put it, it's going to be too heavy. so it might, you know,
You can't put up a
get
wooden,
through
you
the
can't
barrier.
replace the chain link
necessarily.
fence.
Not necessarily.
Not
It's not,
But
it's not too heavy.
the other thing is, to me, it would really confine the backyard. I mean, my personal preference would be that
Well, if you're
you
talking
would
about a
have.
fence in the yard.
No, I'm talking about replacing their proposed chain link fence
Right.
with the wooden fence.
I think that's part of the answer, but I don't think that's the
That's
entire
not the
solution.
whole
Then they're
thing.
looking at
Yeah,
a wooden
but-
fence on
It's
there.
off in
I
the
think-
distance though.
But then they still see.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
Does the
you
rendering
still
show
see.
that you still see an industrial view?
The wooden fence is done they said for a different reason, but if you look, for example, going 20 West in Sudbury, there's a portion of their landfill, their whole landfill has solar panels. There's a portion along Route 20 that has a white wooden fence. It's also a hill, it's just like ours, it's a cap landfill. From Route 20, you cannot see on top of the hill. Once you pull into Longfellow and Tennis, and now you're looking from the other side, it's chain linked, and you can see the entire array.
So the wooden fence helped there. I'm not
That's the
saying-
first thing, but then it also would be like we're looking at a stockade.
Right.
Yeah.
You still need to have screening on the abutters' properties or somewhere.
Well, that's what I was saying, and agreeing with you in terms of the way the line of sight works and the way the landfill rises. You could put a fence there that would even be a solid fence, but it's not from the point of view of, say, 24 Carroll Circle, it's not going to entirely block because of the way the topography works.
Yeah,
Unless
nice to see a
unless you
rendering.
made it a 20-foot fence, which would also.
What did you say? I'm
It would
sorry.
be nice to see a rendering of what that would look like.
Right. Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question. Would you accept trees planted on your property?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a two-part process. I definitely think for all of the abutters, and it's not the whole circumference, because a lot of that there are no abutters, but I think for all, where there are abutters, I think there should be a solid fence so you're not looking into an industrial zone. I didn't pay to live in Weston to be in an industrial zone. And then second of all, I think there should be plantings that are natural. You know, I'm laughing as you're talking about the drainage, for instance, that's one issue. Our back of our yard is filled with water every spring from the runoff of that hill. We have ducks every spring. So to say that, you know, he said, oh, it goes into a particular reservoir. No, it doesn't. Part of it comes right into our backyard, and now more of it will come with concrete blocks. Then we're gonna have, you know, a chain link fence and an industrial zone. Well, you know, I think a solid fence would help, but I also feel like we need to soften that look from our property too, so that
That's fair.
people who drive in don't say, what the hell is that?
The conundrum that we have is that we're looking at, what the planning board tries to do is to mitigate negative impacts. And here we have a situation where our ability to do that is limited because our authority only extends to the limits of the lot that we're looking at. We can't condition that things happen outside of the lot. So we have a situation here where we can't mitigate the impacts sufficiently on the lot, but we can't mandate that something happen beyond the lot line.
But we have facilitated agreements in the past where people were.
Well, first of all, there were, you know, when they capped the landfill, we didn't own the land yet, but they clearly had to do something, because there's a row of arborvitaes, many of which didn't survive, on the hill below where the swale is, so it's on our property, and clearly they, you know, at that point in 1992, when no one was even living there, they planted a line of arborvitae. So, I mean, there is a precedent for that.
And it's the town.
Well, look, we have a problem in that we can't, we have, and by the way, there were several neighbors at the sidewalk, Michael, not just one of the neighbors. They feel that they're sorely impacted, but we don't have the authority to do very much about
Well,
it.
partly you do, the solid fence.
The
is-
solid
is
fence,
one-
that's part of the answer. So the question I put to you is, would the town be willing to consider putting some landscaping on their property to help mitigate the impacts of the solar array?
Well, I'm not sure I can speak for the town, but as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I can offer you my opinion. I think it's not unreasonable for the town to provide, perhaps, maybe it's a landscaping allowance, because it's hard. I'm a little reluctant to have the town go on someone else's property as opposed to saying, hey, you can decide best what should be done and on your property, and where are the important viewpoints and the like, and what are the right species, and maybe there's a way to say, let's do a combination of some perhaps different fencing that would make it less visible, although you'll see the fence will become the visible element, and then perhaps some allowance for those impacted properties to say, here's something that you can decide to put in the right coniferous trees or whatever.
The only way that we would know, though, what that allowance is if we had an independent landscape architect come up with a plan, look at our properties, come up with a plan, and be not Ameresco, not Weston, but be somebody else who would say, here's a plan, and here's what the rendering would look like. The fence is here, and then here are the plantings, and this is what you can expect. And because otherwise we get, oh, here's a check for $5,000, and that, we buy one 15-foot tree for a 300-foot, exposed boundary.
Well,
So-
we can, again, that would be great if we could mandate it, we can't.
Well, the
So-
fence you can. as
Yes,
far
no, I'm talking about what you're
Screening.
discussing, which is the screening and the landscape architect and the design.
Yeah, but can't we have our own, the board's landscape architect consultant come up with?
No, because our authority is at the site limit. We can't do that. I mean,
Well, then
we
the
just don't
town
have
is
the authority to
responsible.
do
It's
that.
not you.
Well, but we can vote against this,
Well,
knowing
you can,
that
sure.
the screening is not going to be there.
I don't understand why this should cost that neighborhood 1 red cent,
Yeah, me neither.
especially since everybody's making money out of this deal. The town, Ameresco, everybody is.
I'm sympathetic, but I mean, it is land next to a municipal use. It's a dump, in other words, that's capped.
Right.
But
And
that's
there's no
what
expectation,
many-
there's no expectation that it's gonna be, that something isn't gonna happen to it at some point.
Well, in
I
fact,
think
when
there
we
is a
bought it, we
big
did have an
No,
expectation.
expectation.
I take the point, but I mean, there's always the chance that there's gonna be development.
We were told because of the membrane, there could be no
There could be no
development.
development.
Yeah.
We bought that property only because we were told nothing could ever be built there because the state had regulations because of the membrane. Or else we
Basically
would not have
looking at
bought
this
the land.
big meadowed hill. It's a little abnormal.
Well,
It's a little
Compared to
abnormal as
hill.
it is.
constructed.
Right, but
Exactly.
at least
That's
it's
what I'm
not
saying.
something industrial.
Well, it's different, yeah, and there are people that hate windmills, for example, they hate the look of windmills and so forth, but other people would say they're beautiful. It's a constructed look versus an unconstructed look. I totally understand, and I think there has to be a path for being able to mitigate the views from something like this. I just think the question is the degree.
Well, we've gotten an informal acknowledgement from at least one of the members of the Board of Selectmen that they might be amenable to providing funding for landscaping. That now the stumbling block seems to be what landscaping, and now we're getting into the really tall weeds. I don't know. I understand your point that the neighbors who are being impacted by this and object to it shouldn't have to bear any cost.
Correct.
But I don't know who would pay for the landscape design that would produce a budget that
Well,
town
who's
could
making the money? The
negotiate.
town's making the money and Ameresco's making money. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar contract that people are making money from. I'm not.
But you were talking about an independent third-party landscape designer,
Well, would you want Ameresco to make the plan for your yard if they're building the array?
This goes back to a good solid estimate for what a landscape designer would cost to come in, view it, survey it, or whatever they have to do, come up with the design and and present it, and then implement it. And then none of that should be done.
And the thing that you can do today is about the fencing. I mean, that is your purview, and that's the first step. I mean, I cannot even imagine, having to drive in or at any window in my house. I mean, second floor, no matter what, I'm gonna still have to see it.
I'm not sure it's screenable without the wooden fence. That's my sense. I'm not sure it's fixable with just screening and not a
No,
wooden
it
fence.
isn't. The
No,
fence
it's
is
not.
part of
The fence is
Just
required.
part.
Actually,
How tall would be?
Well, yeah, the fence itself is not gonna screen it either. I mean,
maybe,
it's there.
My sense is it was gonna accomplish 80% of the job. That was my sense. But I didn't see a rendering. I was just guessing at it from what I saw. I was trying to, in my mind,
We
replace
actually
the
did
chain
provide
fence with a
provided
wire.
the rendering, and I've got copies here.
Oh, of a wooden fence?
No, this just shows how the array is going to. So that's my.
we just leave that.
I mean, then you have to have not seen the wooden fence. Yeah, we wouldn't see the array.
Similar to,
Right.
similar to the
It's just like the one outside.
Not from the second floor. That's why you would screen it. And I don't see why you guys need to.
Sea level is Well, that's the thing.
But everybody's been ignoring
Yes, but they're
order, everybody's talking.
into it.
Let's get back to order if we could.
What you'll see is a little bit of round muscle, sort of dome.
What we'll have to do is, we'll condition that the fence be a solid fence facing the neighbors. Somehow, the sense I'm getting from my fellow planning board members, at least these two, is that some arrangement for screen planting also needs to occur. And I have some thoughts about how that might happen, but I'm not sure that we'd all agree to that, to what I might propose. One possible solution that I thought of was that we could hire our landscape consultant to do an independent evaluation of the conditions, make recommendations, sort of do a landscape design for the 2 or 3 abutters with a cost estimate, and then present that to the Board of Selectmen, and negotiate out some sort of an arrangement between the neighbors and the selectmen. That would mean that we'd have to spend some of our consulting budget paying our own landscape consultant to do the landscape study. I mean, that's one possible alternative that I can see. That way it doesn't come into our decision, but it does at least produce a landscape design by an independent landscape designer that produces some idea of what the cost would be. I'm not sure everybody agrees with that proposed solution.
I think we agree with it. The question is whether it should come out of our budget or some other budget
Yeah,
of
some
the
other
towns,
bucket within
but
the town's budget.
I don't think it matters that much because it's coming out of the town's budget.
Anyway.
I guess what I'd like to hear is that there, you know, I want the project to go forward as well, and I don't have the exact solution because this isn't my area of expertise, but I'd like to hear that, you know, the abutter shouldn't have to have a hugely negative impact in order for this very, you know, cost-saving and green project to go forward.
I think we're all saying that. I mean, I think we all agree with
We all
that.
put ourselves in
And-
your position, I mean, it's.
Yeah,
And who would, if you guys can't do the landscape plan and the money can't come from, I mean, to me, it seems to me something that should be negotiated between the town and Ameresco. Ameresco is gonna make the most money from this. We're talking.
Actually, the town's gonna make the most money from it.
Yeah, the town,
well then,
We're changing the
You-
finances
yeah.
slightly.
yeah,
we got
we
it.
just have to change the contract.
okay. So that's doable though, right? If changing the contract is doable. Do you, what do you think, Michael?
Sure.
Okay, and do you like the
When
idea of
two
having Kim?
parties agree,
Duffy? I don't know,
what?
Shirley, do you like that, Kim?
Kim just stepped in.
You know, one of the things I would suggest is that you won't know the impact until you really can see the impact. It's wonderful for it to say, let's get a landscape architect to do a rendering. That's a, you know, they
But
can do that.
that's what we do. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't
I know,
just
this
say,
is
put up
an
a house and do
interesting
this,
one,
that, and the
though,
other
and-
thing, and then we'll find out later on. We try to plan.
You can get a cross section.
Planning board.
Yeah,
You'll get a
it's not that
Planning
difficult
Correct,
to
you'll get a
do.
cross section.
We sort of do that
Right.
every week of the
Right.
year.
you know.
Yeah, that's what designers
Exactly.
do.
You'll have an elevation and you'll have it.
It's not rocket science.
Well, if you have all the contours fully surveyed, you're right.
Pretty close. Kim, is that something you'd be up for? You know, we're talking about, I think we're only talking about a couple of neighbors here. I'm pretty sure it's possible to do some decent screening on these two lots.
It might be three, there might be.
There's one on
Maybe three.
Lower Field or whatever that's called.
Okay, so,
Al?
yes.
Yeah, I'm Don Stewart, I'm chair of the solar panel committee. We have talked about fences in the past, and I would just caution against 100% opaque fences. They have some serious problems in terms of wind loading and maintenance
Yeah.
that I would be more inclined to say an obscuring fence rather than one that does obscure. There's a big difference in terms of just letting 10% or 20% of and the light obviously follows a different path than the wind, but saying it has to be 100% obscuring fence could cost.
No, I'm sure there are people who know this
You can
well, and
render
know
it.
the possible fences, and, yeah, obscuring is the word.
Right.
Well,
and
you
they
said
have to-
you'd actually done it before. You said that you had a fence in Sudbury, for example, that was a screen
Come up.
fence.
That's actually, yeah, that was a pre-existing fence.
Yeah, that was there before the.
That
That was for the
white,
cat.
that white vinyl fence was pre-existing. I mean, Rob and I worked on that particular site, and one of the abutters was down below, and they had the same issue. And the black chain link fence on their side does take away from the scenery and from the quote-unquote industrial look of the panels. So we did what we could do in terms of that type of balance and compromise. And the abutting neighbor, you know, because he was also industrial, it was a little bit more, it was easier to come to an agreement on that particular side.
Commercial
So
property.
it was commercial property, so it was a little bit easier to say, okay, instead of a galvanized fence, we'll dip it in black vinyl. The black vinyl fence went up, and they were actually pretty okay with it.
Well, the question is this a wheel that you've already invented. I mean, surely this isn't the only time people have requested screen fencing for the perimeter
And
fence.
there's plenty of ways to
So-
do
So this is what you're talking about, right? It's just Google images of obscuring fences that are, you can't really see anything through them, but they do allow an airflow, because there is a good point about the lack of airflow back there. Your yard will feel like a little oven.
I mean,
So that would be,
No, it's mainly for the wind load.
yeah,
For the
right,
wind.
but it would also feel like a little love oven if you had this like solid white vinyl thing back there. And you're right, I understand that from your point of view, it's just for wind load, but
It's
from.
300 feet away from the yard, so it's, I'm not sure who's
Okay.
gonna have an oven.
Okay, so it's not gonna impede airflow.
There's a large distance, that's part of it, there's a large distance of change in elevation.
All right, sorry, I misunderstood. So, but this is a possibility, right?
Yes.
Quick question, how far down the slope does the membrane stop? And if you plant, you want a mound below that membrane, maybe get some arborvitaes, and it'll screen it out from the houses. You're not gonna be able to do anything down the slope.
What we've been told is that you can't plant anything on it. All
Below-
of it-
below
But it doesn't
the
go, the entire slope from our yard is not covered with membrane, it's only the top part that is membrane. In our, you know, what we're
Well, I
looking
see
at.
vent stacks all the way down
No,
the
it
slope.
actually goes down.
It's all
pretty
pretty
close.
close. It's down to the
It
bottom of
doesn't
the
come all the
hill.
way down
Maybe
to our,
5 feet.
because they planted arborvitae's at least 15 feet up the hill when they did the capping, so it can't be the membrane.
We have a line that's from a historic plan. Your lot is this one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably 5 feet in one location, maybe up to 20 on the other side of the property, so it's pretty
So they-
close. There's really not enough room there.
So this is, or is not the first time you've gotten this kind of pushback or this kind of feedback? Have you had to choose different fencing before?
We haven't had to do, in our Massachusetts projects, we haven't had to do special fencing, black chain link or regular chain link is used. A lot of times, you know, this is a little bit different in that it is, you know, adjacent to some residential lots, a lot of times in areas where you just don't
Typically
have
not.
that. That visual, you know, that's what I meant by being very individual.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes you've got, like I said, you've got some space off the cap where you might have an area where you could do something and it works elevation wise.
Yeah.
This is a little bit different than what it is. When you finally get off the cap, you're at the bottom of the slope. So you're not gonna obscure something.
So whoever did this rendering, did they do a rendering with different types of fencing?
You can't.
That would be interesting to me.
Oh, you mean
Take feedback on different types.
Yeah, because there's lots of different, you know, there's doing chain link with inserts in it that would be partially obscuring. Those are a maintenance issue. Something, you know, to be perfectly frank, they're a maintenance issue. and they-
Oh, so that's what's going through your mind too, it's not just the cost of putting it up, it's the cost of maintaining it, because it's your property.
Well, it's 20 years, and you have to think about that. And you have to think about that with wood. Wood is going to, can end up over time not looking so good. You may have more visual, the black chain link is very durable, it stays the way you see it initially.
No, I don't doubt that that's low maintenance, but I think there have to be, in 2015, some other solutions that are obscuring that would also be low maintenance.
Can we just leave it this way? First of all, we'll have I think the only thing we're talking about is the mitigation of the viewscape from the neighbors. So first of all, what we're talking about is a condition that says that an obscuring fence will be erected on that side of the site. We'll leave it up to you what that fence is, talk with the abutters, come with a proposal for what that fence is so we can include it in our conditions. And then that takes care of the fence issue. We'll just ask our landscape consultant to talk with the neighbors about what you might think of for a conceptual scheme for planting, for screen planting, the 2 or 3 abutters that look out at this.
It would be helpful if there were multiple photographs taken during the winter when they came out to the house. It would be helpful to have visualize what the obscuring fence would look like from those multiple sites. Because if you're gonna make a plan, you have to kind of imagine what you're seeing.
Well,
The main photo we used was.
The driveway.
From the backyard.
No, it's from the driveway, yeah.
It was actually from looking out through the backyard. Photos taken through a window, it's difficult to see a lot, and do a rendering of that. We do have some of those photos that were taken, you're looking through a window.
Yeah.
I think this really gives you the best sense of what the fence is going to do.
I mean, we're not gonna be able to, we'll do as much as we can for you, all right?
Yeah. I mean, you can
Alright.
see there's a tree on the very end here,
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about, it actually
Okay.
works.
Yeah, okay. We're doing what we can. We're giving you, we're gonna ask these guys to do an obscuring fence. We're gonna ask them to show us a rendering of what it would look like. It doesn't, I'm not gonna stipulate exactly what perspective it's gonna be taken from. We're assigning our landscape consultant to help you with the screen planning.
Good.
We'll pay for her. I don't know what more we can do.
No,
Well, I think that the town or the applicant can then offer to pay for the landscaping.
Well, we had an informal sort of offer, at least from one of the selectmen, that the town might be amenable to discussing that kind of an arrangement. That's between you and you'll have a landscape design and a
but
rough
who do
idea
you
of the
talk
cost.
to if it's not your purview, whose purview
It's
is
gonna,
it?
I suggest you you make an appointment and speak with the selectmen and ask and make the same case to them that you're making to us, that you're very negatively impacted and you'd like some assistance in mitigating the impact.
It just feels to me that that kind of leaves it very open, it could be, they have largesse and and it all goes well 100% or
Listen,
not.
I don't know what more I can tell you. We're doing everything we can within our authority to help you. But at some point, you'll have to take it across the goal line. And that means taking the information that our landscape designer gives you and bringing it to the people who will be able to make that decision.
Right.
And then it's up to the town
Then it's
to
up to-
cooperate.
Right. That's all we
Oh, I
can
guess
do.
I'm just asking the contingency, if the consultant comes up with that plan, I bring the plan and give the same talk to them that I'm giving to you, to selectmen, and they said, not really.
Well, sorry, that's.
We can vote against it.
Yeah, but I think with those conditions, I'm fine with it. I don't know if you guys still feel that you have to vote.
I have to know that the town is doing its share to.
For a
to-
taxpayer.
Yeah, to support these abutters and to plant the screening before I will vote yes.
I'd like to see the rendering first.
All right.
And I would really like
So-
a promise out of the board. so-
What we'll do then
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
we'll continue the hearing. We'll continue the hearing to, what date?
The next meeting,
July 1.
July
July 1
1.
at 8:30.
If you have the rendering here with an idea of what the fence construction would be, then maybe you could do a
If we could have it
draft.
ahead of time, that'd be great.
Yes, that's what we typically request that people do. If you could do that in the next week or so and then ship a copy to Betsy. We will, then I would suggest that in the meantime, Betsy, you do a draft decision. Because the only thing that's hanging us up right now is the construction of the fence. And if you talk to the neighbors, maybe you can give them an idea of what, Kim, in the meantime?
Can Betsy set that up, or, I mean, am I doing that?
Yeah, you'd be working
Independently?
as an independent consultant, so you just
Okay.
need to get,
I'd like to get contact information from everybody.
I guess you asked me what more, I guess what I was saying is that before the go-ahead is given and the construction starts, I'd like to know that the town is behind us. And the way you're setting it up, I'm not sure we're gonna know before work starts.
well, when you say the town,
The selectmen are willing to write a check to do some kind of mitigation.
I don't know how to answer that question. I'm a member of the planning board.
Well, I assume that Betsy or you could talk to the selectmen and bring up this issue,
Well,
rather than when
Well,
it's up to me.
he's here, Michael's here.
Well,
so-
I'm one, but
But you can,
bring it, bring it up at the next selectmen's
Do you want me to
meeting.
write a letter for Al to sign to the Board of Selectmen about this?
I can bring it up at the next
Or-
Board of Selectmen
I
meeting.
don't
I
know.
think,
I
you
don't
know,
understand.
it's a matter of the amount. It's a matter of, we don't have an unlimited budget to draw from. The town votes for the budget items that we have. You know,
I don't know, I don't see how the planning board we don't have any standing to take a position like that. At some point, we'll give you what we can, or able to give you, but at some point, you need to make an appointment with the selectmen, come in, show them what you're proposing.
I mean, but what you're dealing with is somebody who, it's been 2 years where we first were told, you know, well, talk to the town administrator, then we were told, no, talk to the solar committee. We talked to solar committee, no, it's the planning board you talk to, no, okay, we talked to the planning board. 2 years down the line, we didn't see a rendering, they're ready to start, and there's no mitigation. So I'm supposed to believe that if I call the selectman and say, would you sit and have coffee with me, he's gonna say, okay, I have my checkbook.
It's not coffee, you need to get on the agenda, on the selectmen's agenda.
I was being glib.
No, okay. I mean, have you actually been in front of them, the three of them, at an official meeting? If you come with the planning board's comments, we think it's a good idea to do the mitigating planning. If you come with a schematic, a conceptual landscape scheme and that has some money attached to it, and you go and you present it to the three selectmen for an up or down vote to assist you and your two neighbors in mitigating the damage, the visual damage, I think that might work. I don't know. It's the most.
I hope it would, I just am not sure I want to bet a couple $100,000 on it.
I don't know.
Okay.
the thing with his experience in the past, I can see why he doesn't make those mistakes. And I really think that we would be remiss to let this go through. I just do.
Do you?
I do.
Absolutely.
I think that it's, I mean, people can laugh and you can all roll your eyes.
Nobody's rolling their eyes.
Well, some people have been. But I just think it's a terrible thing to do to our own neighbors, to beggar thy neighbor that way, to save money and just sell them down the river. I think it's terrible. If it were
Goes
in my
against what we
backyard,
stand for.
right, if it were in my backyard, I'd feel so abandoned, you know, just completely set loose and like, good luck, we don't care. You know, I'm so sympathetic
We
to this
shouldn't be
man.
where we are today,
Yeah.
and we can vote against it.
Right. And you guys can all vote for it.
And this is 11:30 or the 12th hour. We're here talking about it when it's this late in the game, and now you're telling me, oh, well, bring it to the selectmen and see what they say.
But I do think that Michael Harity heard you. And while that maybe you can't have $100,000 worth of plantings, there's a nice happy medium that can be achieved. As Al used to tell me when I was a new member of the planning board, when everybody goes away unhappy, we've done our job.
So
So,
come on,
to clarify in terms of process,
we'll meet you again on July the 1st. We'll have a draft decision that you know, for review. If you provide some sort of an indication beforehand of the fence that you're proposing and a rendering of what it would look like, then we can decide that will be the planning board's condition on the project, whether the planning board can agree with that or not. So that's your homework assignment.
But can Kim do a design, and can the Board of Selectmen agree to pay to implement that design by July 1st, by the time we're supposed to vote for this?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that would be a requirement for me in order to.
Can Ameresco adjust the contract somewhat to create some funds by then?
we would work with the town on that, we'd need to know what that was going to be.
Right, yeah, that would be definitely.
I don't think
well,
that it's clear it's not something that you want us to determine, so.
If you could, what are the sidewalks next week? Is there one or two? I mean, is there intake afterwards?
I don't think so.
Maybe you could visit those neighbors on Tuesday morning, next Tuesday morning. And because it wouldn't take long to do a conceptual idea of what kind of planning would work.
It's hard without contours and without really having the,
She could do it.
No, it's really
Aren't there contours on the map?
It's all conservative.
Yeah. And then, you know, she can make that available to you, and then my suggestion is get on the selectmen's agenda as soon as possible. If you can get on the agenda before the 1st of July, that would be.
right, so you asked me what I'm asking, I would like for the planning board to have a contingency that this isn't going forward until, I think the selectmen want to do right by us as well, but if it all has to be negotiated via numbers, it's all coming out of someone's pocket, the fence and the screening, and I don't want it to come out of my pocket. So they're gonna have to do some hard negotiating. I'd like you to be able to stand behind me until that negotiating's done, rather than set me loose and say, it's not my problem, go to the selectmen.
Well, the 1st is 2 weeks from now. Let's see if we can get it down the road a little bit and talk about it on the 1st of July. We'll be talking about it. So we'll continue until the 1st of July. What time?
8:30.
8:30.
We'll do everything we can to get ready what we can by then.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll keep in touch with Betsy in terms of what we have, because I don't
Well,
want.
you've got the model, I mean, and you've got the model
Yeah,
of the
it's a
fence,
matter
so
of
you
just-
replace
it's
the
just a
model
matter
of
of
the fence.
changing the fence.
Yeah, exactly.
What, you know, gives me, what we'll likely do is, you know, we'll come up with a couple of different options here. This is very open-ended right now. This obscuring fence could be a lot of different things. We can come up with a couple of things.
There's a
Sounds
non-industrial.
reasonable. All right, thank you.
Good job. We're looking forward. Sure.
It's been fun, thanks.
Okay, we're ready to. Self-medication never works. Okay, we're ready to start the public hearing for 34 Old Colony Road. Who's making the presentation? You are?
At least two.
It's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Sometime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sorry. I thought I heard
When you don't sign that, so you don't have to go back.
Okay.